being part of nature, embedded in the web of life, which leads to a holistic paradigm, whole system structures that align with nature, which gives very different results. When integrated in all levels of law and across all policy areas, an earth-centered, relational and ecological approach to lawmaking scales up regenerative results on autopilot. So how will this work in practice? We've been talking about sustainability for decades, but there is actually no legal framework to enforce it. Our current sustainability model, the three interlocking circles, is inherently flawed because it's out of sync with reality. It assumes that the three areas, people, nature, and economy, can operate independently of each other, and sustainability happens somewhere in the middle. What we have in reality is more like the nature's rights model, with three concentric circles, a nested hierarchy of dependency, with economy being dependent on people, and both economy and people dependent on nature for their very existence. From this flows a natural hierarchy of rights, with economic rights as a subsystem of human rights, and both economic and human rights being a subsystem of nature's rights. In this model, the rights are ecosystemic and relational, working in synergy to support each other, eliminating adversarial conflict. In this model, nature's rights is enforceable against all actors. Contrast this with the current system where human rights and corporate rights work in opposition to each other, and nature's rights doesn't even exist. Human rights are only enforceable at the moment against governments and not corporations, whereas corporate rights are enforceable against all. This is why we need a complete restructuring and reframing of the very notion of rights and how they are held in society, bringing it closer to the ancient wisdom concept of right relationship. If we look at our final model on the right, we take the nature's rights model and we make it 3D. We can map onto each circle the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And if we add a fourth circle at the bottom representing the planetary boundaries, we have a comprehensive framework for its implementation, along with a rights-based legal framework for enforcement. We recently did a study for the European Economic and Social Committee, proposing an EU fundamental charter for the rights of nature. These diagrams sum up our proposal. If you'd like to find out more or how you can help to drive these ideas forward, please get in touch. Thank you.
So I think you'll find that that was a powerful physical representation of some of the issues involved. I think that we can learn a lot from how nature is presented there by Mumta, and I'd just like to thank her for her presentation and preparing that in advance. So we're now going to hear from Anne Ryan. She's an author and activist. She believes that society's civic capacity affects how ideas are taken up, how movements and ideas are sustained, and how a body of knowledge can grow concerning just and ecological ways to live. To this end, she participates in local, national, and international civic projects. She's a founding member of Derrybeg Community Supported Farm in her hometown of Celbridge in County Clare. She was coordinator of Basic Income Ireland for 10 years and is an active member and former trustee of Fiesta, the Foundation for the Economics of Sustainability. So thank you, Anne, and welcome.
Hi, thanks, Declan. Hello to all my old friends who are here, and thanks for the invitation, Bridget, and greetings to everyone that I don't know already. It's a real privilege. I feel quite nervous, but also very moved by what I've been hearing already. So I'm going to start my timer now, and oh gosh, yeah, that's down one. And keep this to 7 minutes. So I'm a member of FASTA, and I'm speaking on behalf of FASTA today. The word FASTA means in the future or henceforth. And we are the Foundation for the Economics of Sustainability, set up to support the work of the ecological economist Richard Douthwaite in 1999. And Richard sadly died in 2012, too young, but his influence continues. We're a registered charity based in Ireland, but we have an international membership and international trustees, and we're members of the Environmental Pillar, the Irish Environmental Network, and also the international body for a wellbeing economy, the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. And we were a small think tank, mostly volunteers. So really what we try to do is to seed our ideas in partnership with other organizations. So I'm going to focus on just two aspects of what underpins our work, and then talk about a very specific proposal. So systemic change, which is precisely what Mumta was talking about, is one of the things that inspires us, the need for systemic change. The political will needs to be there as well, but sometimes the systems just aren't up to scratch. And so systemic interventions have to be made at kind of key leverage points within systems, within economies and social systems. We call that upstream changes, so that virtuous cycles can kind of flow downstream within them. And then you also, I suppose part of that includes changing the rules. And that's exactly what the rights of nature are also trying to do, in changing the rules, in having the rights of nature enshrined in law. And of course, also we believe that systemic change comes about through cultural change, the paradigm shift that was spoken about in the video earlier. And connected to that then is we work with the notion of the commons, which was also mentioned, I think, by David Bollier, isn't that right, in the earlier video? And the commons really refers to the common pool resources that nature provides for us, or that we all create together collectively, and that should be managed to benefit all of us, not privatized. And that, of course, was a theme in the video earlier as well. So we see the atmosphere as a commons, a global commons that needs to be managed globally. And in this time, particularly with COP going on and the need to address climate breakdown, we are trying to talk to people in Glasgow, although I'm not there, I'm at home in Kildare, but some of our people are there, trying to talk to them about our cap and share proposal. So that's a real, very specific systemic intervention that involves setting a hard cap on fossil fuel production. So it's really upstream. It's even getting away from the notion of emissions to where the fossil fuels are produced and where they actually enter the economy. We propose putting a hard cap on those based on the science and based on safe limits, the safe planetary limits. And then what would happen is that a number of permits would be issued to allow some fossil fuels to come into economies, and the big fossil fuel companies would have to buy those permits. They would have to buy them from a global citizens trust that would be set up to administer this. And the money that they would pay for those permits would be distributed throughout the world to every citizen of the globe in the form of a carbon dividend. So that's the share part. So you have the cap on the safe limits and then the share. And the cap would decrease every year. So the number of permits would be going down every year, but it would be done in a very predictable way. So it would also affect a smooth transition of breaking our dependence on fossil fuels. The economy would have to gradually adapt to the decreasing availability of fossil fuels. And what's happening now is the really important part about this in terms of social justice is that right now, not enough money is going to the global south to help them, and to vulnerable people to help them develop their economies in low fossil ways. So this would be bringing money to every individual on the globe. So those whose fossil fuel use is low would benefit most, because they would have excess money. Those whose fossil fuel use is high in the rich countries would still be having to use their dividend, but they would have financial incentives, of course, to decrease their fossil fuel activity. So it's effectively rich countries will be subsidizing the energy transition of the poor through this direct distribution. And cap and share then would go a long way to redressing the historic and current inequalities and imbalances. Now, we're fully aware that this is not the only thing that's needed, but we do believe that it really complements all the efforts that governments and states and citizens are making. So it can exist alongside all the other policies and measures. And we believe that it's part of it needs to be a crucial part of a really genuine Green New Deal, a degrowth-led international people's Green New Deal. So that I suppose part of then, what it does really then is it strengthens the social floor. So referring to the donut that Kate Raworth has in her economic model of donut economics, the safe planetary limit is set. That's the outer ecological ring of the donut, and the inner social floor is also safeguarded for people through the carbon dividend. Now, the carbon dividend would be less and less every year because eventually it would be phased out. But in the period when it was available, there would be so much support for all the pioneers who are currently developing new ways to live, developing low renewable energy sources, and so on. Now, it might seem like, oh gosh, we have to wait until this global trust is set up and every country is involved. That would be wonderful if it happened. But it is possible for individual countries to work in partnership. Say individual countries like Ireland could work in partnership with a country with a similar population in the global south. We have selected, say, Liberia or Eritrea. And we could set our own fossil fuel cap here and then split the dividends and divide them with the people in Eritrea or Liberia. A bloc of countries like the EU could do the same thing. So we don't have to wait for the entire Global Citizens Trust to be in place before we could start doing this. And you could have NGOs involved and so on. So while we don't use the language of the rights of nature kind of specifically in our work, we feel that this is entirely congruent with the principles around the rights of nature. And we have also, of course, in the past been influenced on the Bolivian Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth that was made in Cochabamba in 2010. So it's been informing the work all along. So that's my 7 minutes up, and maybe there'll be time for more discussion of that later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anne. That was very interesting, and I think links together quite well with Mumta's presentation, and indeed now with Mary. So I'll introduce Mary, who I think many of you will already know. Mary has been a community activist, a local primary school teacher, complementary therapist, and community dance teacher for over 40 years. She is a founding and active member of Zero Waste Northwest, a group which was formed to look at alternatives to incineration as a method of dealing with waste. She is one of the founders and organizers of The Gathering, an open collection of individuals, communities, and grassroots-based campaign groups and activists. So welcome, Mary, and I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you, Declan. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And it's lovely to be here, and I feel very privileged to be speaking because Maeve is supposed to be doing this, but she's away playing a rugby match, might join us later. I think we were to share it, so now I'm doing the whole thing. So I was going to start off by saying that because I thought there's going to be people here who might not know where Derry is. I was going to tell them where Derry was, but I think the majority actually know that Derry is in the northwest corner of Europe and the northwest corner of Ireland, and it's on a border. But I do want to share with you the fact that, Derry is known for its music, its song, its dance, its poetry, its drama, its theatre, its sense of fun. It's also known for its creative thinking. And we have the biggest Halloween carnival here in Europe. And we are known for our civil rights leaders and for using the arts to raise our voices and to empower our community. So I wanted to share that with you because I think it's really important that you know that this just didn't start a few years ago when we started Zero Waste Northwest. This is something that's very organic. So in zero waste